So I get it. Isn't Amazon all unicorns, rainbows, and $1 million screenshots? Unfortunately, there's some unsexy parts of the business, and logistics is one of them. But it's also, frankly, one of the most critical pieces because we're really moving goods around the world. And so there's a backbone of infrastructure that's super critical to think about for the operations of your Amazon business. Is it fun? Maybe for some people, it's not fun for me. Is it sexy? No, it's not, but it's absolutely worthwhile to hone your skills in the areas of logistics because it really is critical to running and scaling an Amazon business. So we're going to start out by going through the shipping template. This is precisely what I use in my Amazon brands and businesses that really functions as a backbone for every single product as we move it across the world and into Amazon warehouses. So what we do with the shipping dimensions template, which we're actually going to provide in the resources section, is to essentially create a tab in this spreadsheet for each brand that we've got and every product that we've got. So we've got one stored for brand A, one stored for brand B as an example. Let's say that you've got 10 products in brand A, you'd have 10 tabs in brand A. And the reason being is if you've been in this Amazon game for any period of time, you realize that you've got to know the dimensions of your product, both when you're shipping from China or an international location into the US or into the market that you're selling on Amazon. But you've also got to be able to have master carton dimensions to ship those products into Amazon warehouses. And then you've got to have the individual unit dimensions and understand what those are. So versus trying to figure it out every time and measure every time and ask your vendor every time what the dimensions are, we like to create these templates so that it's really drag and drop. We can come in at any time when we're moving product around at any time and leverage these dimensions and this information. So I'll just go top to bottom on how we use this thing. First of all, the nomenclature is basically the product name. This is like the descriptor of the product, and then the ASIN, and then we put that down at the bottom here. What we also like to do is do a link to our actual website. So I basically double click on this website here. I click on this link and then you can insert a link. So we actually like to have a link to our own website. We like to have a link to every market that product is in. So it could be Amazon US, CA, MX, UK, etc. For the ASIN name, because it can obviously be different in different international markets, we'll typically kind of use the hero market. So typically in the US is where we do most of our sales. And then these link offs to these other markets like the UK would show the actual ASIN for that particular market. You could also do like ASIN B whatever, comma, whatever for all the markets you've got, but that's typically how we do it. So you can come in here at any time and click to any one of these markets it's in and see the actual listing as it exists on that URL. The next is basically to map out both the master carton and individual unit dimensions as well as the HTS code. The important thing here is we like to have imperial and metric. I wish that US was on the metric system. It would make life a lot easier, but it's not. So we've got to ship stuff into the US on imperial and within Amazon's system as imperial. And then every other marketplace and most of your factories and vendors are going to be on the metric system. So we basically just like to take the active master carton dimensions in imperial and metric as well as the individual unit in terms of imperial and metric. So we've got all of that here. If those change over time, we want to come in here and edit this template and update it. I also like to take a screenshot of what it looks like if you're booking a shipment within Amazon's Seller Central system, just so that if somebody's doing this for the first time, they can actually visualize exactly what that looks like. For the HTS code, we also like to place that here. So we've got the active HTS code that we're using. So anytime somebody needs to know what that is, they can come in here. If you're doing international, you could also have an HS code, which is very similar to the HTS code that you could have there. The next thing, which I think is super important, is to keep a catalog of who our factory contacts are. That's important because at different moments in time, we may need different people on the team messaging these folks via WeChat, which is a centralized platform that we communicate with vendors. And we might need to email a factory for this particular product if something comes up, whether we want to place a new order, we've got a question about something, we're shipping something, etc. So typically what I like to do is have the primary contact name and person first. So this is going to be typically your sales manager or account manager. So basically the factory name and then the name of the contact, their email. And then I also like to do a screenshot of their WeChat ID so that if we need to add them on WeChat or there's a new member of the team, they know who that is. I also like to include the higher tier contact, the boss of that person, ideally the factory boss here as well. So basically their name, email, WeChat, etc. I'll get into vendor management in a second on how you can actually get these contacts, because there's a couple hacks that I use to be able to get that. But when shit hits the fan, you need a big ask, a strategic thing's happening, something big has happened that you need fixed. Oftentimes you need to go to the boss and kind of step up the game a little bit to get stuff done. So I like to have the boss contact there as well. And then I like to have the address of the factory. Again, this is important for shipping directly from the factory to Amazon, or for your freight forwarder to go pick up the goods. It's just nice to have the address of the actual factory here as well. And then there's usually like 3 or 4 addresses that the product may ship from into Amazon warehouses. So I like to catalog those here. If you're based in the US like I am, I have some goods actually shipped from our home base here in Utah. So there's that address there. There's a 3PL in California as an example that you could put here. Maybe you've got multiple 3PLs throughout the US. Include all of those regional 3PL addresses in the US. So I've got one here for the California. I've got one for Forwarder One here as an example. And then Canada, you may have a 3PL, or some international country, UK, whatever. You can obviously copy this and expand it as needed. And then I like to just have the sizing tiers for reference in case we're ever playing with the sizes, just so we kind of understand what the impact may be here at the master carton level. So this is the shipping dimensions template. It's super important for cataloging what the dimensions of your product are for shipping, both internationally and domestically in Amazon warehouses. It's good to have the WeChat contacts and the factory contacts and address, so you've got that. And then all of the potential logistical points or address points that your product's going to ship from into Amazon warehouses. This template is super important as your team books shipments on your behalf, or if you're going to book shipments, so that you're not having to find this information every single time. So whenever we create a product, we create a tab in this, and it just becomes this library that we will update over time as we add new products and or as dimensions or factory details change for a particular product.